Okay, so we're going to look at video transitions. So we're going to start off with two clips, and we're going to place a transition between the two. So if you think about it, up until this point, we've basically been dealing with a jump cut from one scene to another. You can see the jump cut between the landscape and the people in the city. So obviously the transition between those two clips often eases the transition. So, you know, a dissolve, fade, fade to black, that kind of thing. What we're going to do now, another important point. So first of all, we're going to go to the project panel here, and we should just have two tabs here: the project panel itself, which we're familiar with, project tab, and then there is an effects tab here. Okay, not to be confused with the effect controls tab here. This one is a different range of effects. These are preset effects. Okay. And in here, so there are different ways of getting these effects. Ones we're going to focus on are video transitions. If I expand the folder there, and we're going to look at the dissolve effects here, transitions here, and there's a list of them there. Another way of getting to, so we're going to use cross dissolve. Another way to get to it is to, I just compress that again, is to just search in here. So if we search for cross dissolve, you'll see that it appears down here. We can drag that across in between the two clips. Now you see that what happens at the moment, in fact let me just step back, is if you remember these little kind of corner tabs, so there's one at the end of the first clip here, see the little grey, just drag those apart, see the little grey kind of corner mark there, that means that's the end of that clip. So that is the whole clip. Look at this one, again that means that is the start of the absolute start of that clip. So what we need really for the transition to work effectively is we don't want the whole of the clip. We need some extra frames where basically the two clips overlap, so the transition can use those frames, if that makes sense. So if I drag the cross dissolve in here, you see at the moment it says insufficient media. This transition will contain repeated frames. So what it will do, so where these two overlap, these two clips, it will repeat, as it says, repeat frames to make the overlap work. So that can work. So as we see, so if I drag across here, we will get our transition, but with some repeated frames, which generally looks fine. But what we can also do, so I'll just delete the transition, is if I just drag these apart, we can trim this, the end point of this one down. So you see this section, this end section here that I've dragged in here. Now we've got some extra frames here to overlap this second clip. And if I drag this one in again, we've got some extra frames here to overlap here. So if I drag the cross dissolve in again now, what this does as well is it means that we can extend the cross dissolve itself. So if I just zoom in on that, actually I think that's fully extended now, yeah. So just extended the cross dissolve itself a bit, and again if we play that through. So just to make that clear really, the difference between the cross dissolve at the end and the beginning of the clip, and having the two clips with some frames to spare at the beginning and end. What can also be quite useful is if you click on the cross dissolve on the timeline here and go up to effect controls, which is the bit we're familiar with, you'll see here there's a kind of zoomed in representation of the transition here, and we can see it sort of illustrates what I was talking about. You've got the first clip here, you can see the end of the first clip here, so you can see that little kind of notch on the top right corner, which shows that's the actual end of the entire clip. And then you've got the second clip here, again with the notch in the top corner. And then you've got the transition, which is, so this is where the two clips overlap with one another, and then you've got the transition kind of between the overlap there. So you've got the actual, you see the line here, this corresponds with the cut between the two clips here on the timeline in the middle, and you can see the transition either side of that, which you can see here, but then this shows you where they actually overlap. I hope that makes sense. Okay, so again, you can, this can be quite useful. You can adjust this, so you can take the transition and lengthen it. Okay, and you'll see it correspondingly lengthen on the timeline there. Scrub the needle and test that out. So it just gives you some more options. There, it gives you the duration of the transition there. You can actually change the length of duration there by dragging as well. So some additional options just for really fine-tuning the transition there. Just going to draw your attention to some of the most common, well, a couple of the other very common transitions. So if we remove the cross dissolve, we could have a look at dip to black, which is commonly used. So again, if we go back to the effects tab in the project window, okay, and again we can search for it. So if we type in dip, you see we've got dip to black or dip to white, two fairly commonly used. Drag in again, so you can see we have a fade to black, and then a fade out from black into the next clip. So kind of thing, again, I think the more you think about transitions, they communicate meaning as well, so dip to black is often used to represent a change in time or a change in place. Okay, so you might have a change in time, a fade to black. You might have the same scene, something happening in that scene in the morning, fades to black, fades back into something else happening in that same scene, maybe later in the day, or it can be used to move. So that's a transition in time. We've got the transition in place, which we've done here with the transition from the forested lake area to the a different place, which is the city with the crowds. And again, obviously, just the same, if I click on the transition here, we can see a visual representation of the clip there. We can see the overlaps, where it overlaps the clips here, and then we can see the actual cuts there in the middle. So a kind of real zoomed in, more detailed view of what's going on there.